Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk in the Midlothian region of Scotland, which of course is the capital of the UK, which is of course the capital of Europe, and of course the capital of the globe, and the capital of the solar system, the capital of the galaxy, and the capital of the next door galaxy called Andromeda, and the one after that, and all of the other ones, and probably the capital of the metaverse and other metaverses, should they exist. I'm not sure how long I can keep this joke going for, but anyway, Scotland is awesome. But yeah, welcome everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. We've got a really good question to kick the evening off with from Boris Dancy, which we'll get to in just a minute. But I'm glad everybody is here. We've only got a few people here. We've only got like 11 people, but that's okay. It'll be all right. We'll hopefully pick up a few stragglers as we get through the next few minutes of the show. So let's go see who is here. So, as I say, we got Billy Morgan, we got Boris Dancy and his question, we've got Rich Cresswell, we've got Ambient Dave, we've got Caltradusiac, we've got Just Bob. He says he'll be floating in the background today, wrapping up some loose ends cleaning. Well, if you're floating during cleaning, that suggests that you've flooded the kitchen again. So you probably need to get that sorted out. But anyway, we've got Brett Marlowe, we've got Mike Johnson here as well, we've got Paul Morgan, and who else do we have? We've got the W5 family, and we got John Lake here, and we got Peter Brooks, and we've got everybody's favourite Gardner99, who is also here, which is fantastic. Dave says, the capital of capitals and home of the midges. Well, yeah. Scotland is capital of capitals. I will definitely agree with that. And yes, up north in the Highlands, you do tend to get midges. Not quite so much down in the lowlands. Who knows why? But it is a thing. I have not really seen much in the way of midges in the lowlands, which is where I am. I'm in the kind of central belt of Scotland. But no, haven't really seen that. But anyway, excuse me. I'm going to have to issue an apology to start the show, by the way, folks. I have a raging cold, so I'm likely to be sneezing, snorting, not snorting things, but sneezing, snorting, coughing, and sneezing, and more sneezing and more coughing throughout the course of the show. So I apologize in advance for that. There's not a lot I can do about it. I am not feeling great, to be honest, but I'm here. I'm here, and I'm doing the show, because I said I'd do the show. Oh, yes, I like that, Rich. That is a wonderful challenge. We could certainly discuss that. I think you and I probably should get on a call and discuss how to do that practically. But that's a fantastic idea. I love it. All right, so let's get to Boris's question. He says, how can / should we as producers / songwriters, there's a lot of slashes there, but that's okay. It's a violent sentence, I guess. Save the bridge or C-section. Most pop songs today only give you 2 chords and 2 sections. You're kind of right, but also kind of not quite. Some of the really, really, really great songs that are around today have more than just 2 chords in them. Some do have 2 chords and are really great. But there are some songs that actually have quite a bit of harmonic complexity, a little bit more than just a couple of chords. And some of them are actually really quite complicated structure-wise, especially rap songs, actually. I say this because there's a lot of rap songs, there's a lot of rap artists out there. They write really good lyrics, and they know how to put together a really good beat and a really good vibe, but they don't really understand how a song should be structured. So they kind of go, oh, this sounds good. So they then, but it would be great if we did this. So they go and do that, and then they add that to the song. They add this. They add things to the song, which they may or may not come back to. They may or may not repeat. They'll only repeat it if they think it sounds good to be repeated. So quite a lot of that music, I'm not speaking for every hip-hop artist or rap artist, but a good number of them, they don't really understand song structure particularly greatly. Some do, some don't. Eminem is a fine example of somebody that really knows how to put together a very, very good arrangement of his songs. His songs have really, really excellent structure, but they're actually quite complicated as well. They're not straightforward, but they're great to listen to. I'm actually, believe it or not, for as much as his lyrics are a wee bit risque in places and a wee bit sweary, I actually like his songs, and I'll tell you why. I'm not really a rap fan, but I like Eminem for the same reason that I like Sting and I like Paul Simon. These guys are great wordsmiths. They are so good with words and interplay and, literary subtleties and use of literary devices that are really, really fantastic. For a brief time, I was a high school music teacher for 2 years, in fact. And during those 2 years, I also had to teach English literature at the same time. So I was doing all of my music classes, and then when I wasn't teaching a music class, I would be teaching English literature to like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. And so I taught Shakespeare. I love Shakespeare for the same reason that I love Sting and Paul Simon and great songwriters like that. I love Shakespeare for the same reason. But here's the best part about that. In order to get kids into Shakespeare, I had to get them into words. So I chose Eminem. And I chose to compare a Shakespeare sonnet with the lyrics to one of Eminem's most well-known songs. And I put them side by side. And I said, I am including the sweariness in Eminem's lyrics because I think actually the way he uses sweariness is kind of justified because it's culturally relevant to the audience that he's writing for. But I put these two things, Shakespeare's sonnet and Eminem, side by side, and I got the kids to kind of do a comparative study on the two and look for similarities, look for commonalities, look for common ideas, look for common literary devices and techniques used. And so that was how I got kids into Shakespeare. And before we knew it, by the end of the year, the kids had spontaneously decided they were going to do a new production of Romeo and Juliet, except it was going to be hip-hop based. And the dialogue was going to be rapped. And they did that themselves. And it was wonderful. It was glorious. So to answer your question, and I kind of am answering your question, there are sections of poetry, and there are poetic and literary styles that were in vogue for a long time, and then they kind of fell out of vogue and fell out of use, and, literature moved on. The way we write songs, the way we write words, the way we use language has moved on. And so it is with songwriting. If you go back like 120 years to like the turn of the 20th century, so beginning of the 20th century and music hall, and if you look at songs written for music hall and for vaudeville and those kind of stage acts, you will find that there is a section of a song that is really quite common, and it's called the refrain. What does the refrain do? The refrain basically introduces and sets the scene for the song that is yet to come. It's kind of like a teaser, if you will. It's like an intro, but it's longer and it has words. Most intros to songs don't have words these days. But that's what the refrain does. So most people will know the Rodgers, I think it's Rodgers and Hammerstein. I can never quite remember. It's certainly Richard Rodgers. Jazz standard is now a jazz standard, but it was written for a stage production, and it's called My Funny Valentine. It's one of my favorite songs. I've performed it a bajillion times with all sorts of vocalists over the years. I've sung it myself as well. But my favorite times of doing it is when I've accompanied my mother singing and me on piano. And it's called My Funny Valentine. And what a lot of people don't know is that before you get into the first verse, there is a refrain. Nobody sings the refrain anymore. And it just totally fell out of use. Nobody uses it. Anytime you hear My Funny Valentine, this is what you get. You get... That's what you get. You get the verse, starting with My Funny Valentine. But there's a whole section of the song that lasts probably a good 90 seconds that comes before it. And it kind of sets up the atmosphere, the mood, the personality, the character, the story that is about to be told in the rest of the song. Nobody sings it anymore. And it totally fell into disuse until the great Ella Fitzgerald. And I think she did a performance with the great piano player Oscar Peterson. And it was just Oscar on piano and Ella singing. And they decided they were going to do the refrain. And nobody knew it, so nobody recognized what this song was. And then she went perfectly straight into the verse of Funny Valentine that we all know and love. And so she kind of raised from the dead the refrain to Funny Valentine. And this was in, 1958, 59. I think it was that she did this, and it became an instant smash hit again. Having been a smash hit on Broadway in the 1930s, now suddenly it was a smash hit all over again, and people were now singing it with the refrain. Only for about 20 years. By the time you get to 1978, 1979, we've got the funk era happening, we've got heavy metal, we've got big hair rock, we've got all of that going on, and you know, jazz itself is kind of in a state of flux and is not very secure anymore. The refrain has fallen out of use with most contemporary popular songs. It's just not a thing anymore, and so people stopped singing it with Funny Valentine and with other old jazz standards. So what I'm getting to is how we write songs and how songs are performed evolves and changes and develops over time. So things fall out of fashion, they fall out of use. And I think you're right that the bridge is becoming one of those. There are some great songs with some great bridges, but there are also some songs where the bridge just feels like it doesn't belong. It feels like they've sellotaped another section from a completely unrelated song and put it into the middle of this song to make it longer, because maybe the song itself they figured out was only like 2.5 minutes long. What are we going to do? We need to make this song 3 minutes and 31 seconds because that is the standard for radio airplay. What do we do? So they grabbed this middle section from this totally unrelated song and dropped it in. Now we have a song that is 3 minutes and 31 seconds long. Perfect for radio airplay. but the bridge doesn't really make any sense. So you're right, there is this possibility that it could fall completely into disuse and be replaced by, you know, a guitar solo or something. There's nothing wrong with guitar solos. Guitar solos are fine. Guitar solos are great. I mean, Jeff Beck is one of my favorite guitar players. Steve Lukather is another one of my favorite guitar players. And I think at the, you know, if I was to list off a bunch of guitar players that I really enjoy listening to, I think at the top of the tree is going to be Alan Holdsworth and Pat Metheny. Those are probably my two favorite guitar players of all time. Alan Holdsworth and Pat Metheny, both with completely different styles of guitar playing. So, you know, great soloists. Great soloists. Definitely, if you want to fill out your song, that's kind of the modus operandi for a lot of songs, particularly in rock and in popular music and in jazz as well. Stick a guitar solo in there. It will fill out that song, and then you can go into the last chorus and you can do your outro and all of that. So yeah, the bridge is probably under threat a wee bit. How do we preserve it? How do we save it? Well, I think what we have to do is we have to go back to its original purpose. What was the original purpose of a middle eight or a bridge? Well, the purpose of the middle eight and the bridge was to do two things. Number one, keep the listener interested. Keep the listener focused. Number two, develop the story. Develop the story of your song. Now, your verses are the primary storytelling points in your song, and the chorus is your punchline. Okay? So what does the bridge do? The bridge gives you an opportunity to take the song in a different direction whilst keeping it kind of anchored in its home key and, you know, in the vibe of the song. So you want to keep it hooked, but you want to take the listener someplace else. You kind of want to tell a related story, or you want to, you know, kind of flesh out the story, maybe from another person's point of view, to provide commentary upon what's going on in the song and what's going on in the narrative of your song, and then bring it back to the punchline, to the chorus. So that is the purpose. That's the true intent of a bridge, is to link different parts of the song together. So a bridge can be used in a variety of different ways. One is to take the listener in a slightly different direction, provide a slightly different perspective on the song. Secondly, it can also be used as a send-off. What is a send-off? A send-off sends off to the soloist. It prepares you for the guitar solo, the trumpet solo, the tenor sax solo, whatever it's going to be. And there are some very, very fine examples of that. And you might actually go through a series of temporary modulations from one key to another before you get into the key that is designed for your soloist. So let's say you have a guitar solo for your big power ballad. You want your guitar solo to be in a key that is going to be great for the guitarist to really explore the instrument and let loose. But the song needs to be in the key that is going to be great for the range and register of the vocalist who is singing, and also great for the melody, the whole kind of range of the melody of the song. So maybe the song is in G, or maybe it's in B flat or something. But guitar players are not, they'll play in G, they'll be okay with playing in G, but they may not be okay with playing in B flat. That's okay. You can take the listener to the key of E or something like that, or the key of D major, which will provide a different key center. It's not too far away. Okay, E is you know, an augmented fourth away, but that's okay. You can do that. And then you can lead your listener back to the key of G or B flat, whatever it is, for your chorus. Or you can have your chorus in the same key as the guitar. Might be a little bit shouty. Might not be. Depends upon the range of your song, the tessitura of your song. But But yeah, so it can be used as a send-off into a solo, which then, takes up another step into your final chorus, where you've got the fullest extent of your arrangement possible, with the widest possible stereo image of your mix. So that is what a bridge does. How do we preserve it? We preserve it by writing good ones, making use of it as a device in your song, and making it, justifying its use and making it popular again by doing it. This is the thing. This is how things get resurrected. This is how fashions come back. We always talk about, clothing fashion and hair fashion being kind of, it goes around in cycles. Like, flared trousers, big fashion thing in the 70s. A bit of a joke in the 80s. People didn't like them anymore. And definitely not something you would wear in the 90s. But guess what? They're kind of coming back again. And flares are, maybe not as wide as they used to be, but they're certainly coming back. And a lot of those 70s fashion ideas are certainly coming back a wee bit. And certainly funk is back. Funk is back with a vengeance. It's not quite the same as funk in the 70s, but it's back. Maybe has a slightly different attitude to it, but it's definitely back. So these things, they go around in cycles. And so it is with songwriting. So it is with music. A genre dies out a wee bit or kind of goes into obscurity and is almost forgotten about. And then suddenly it comes back again. Traditional jazz. New Orleans jazz, that kind of thing. In New Orleans, it has never died out. It has never died out in New Orleans. But outside of New Orleans, that kind of Dixieland style, it kind of died out towards the back end of the 1940s because bebop was the thing. Bebop and jazz as art music, came to the fore. And actually, without this whole thing of going from big band to small band, which is what happened with the bebop era. Without that happening, you wouldn't have rock and roll. Actually. It's funny how these kind of things develop. But Dixieland jazz is having a bit of a revival at the moment. That, and we call that traditional jazz. It's definitely having a revival at the moment. There are a lot of young kids that are rediscovering this music from, the 1920s and 1930s. Louis Armstrong's music is suddenly people are going, hey, let's buy Satchmo's records again. So these things kind of go round and go round and go round. How do they keep coming back? They keep coming back because people rediscover them. So maybe in order to prevent bridges from dying out, we need to make sure that they have a rightful place in our songwriting. So that was a long way to say yes. But it's a great question. Let's see, what else is there? Alice Frednam singing My Funny Valentine. I don't think I've heard her interpretation of it. But it is a beautiful song, and I've heard so many vocalists sing it. Male and female, actually. Brett says he's a guitarist, and he says, I ain't afraid of no flat keys. Yeah, good. I'm a piano player, and I'm a jazz guy, and although most jazz music is written in flat keys, I'm not afraid of sharp keys. I'm perfectly happy to play a blues in C sharp major. I've done it. As soon as I start going, hey, let's do a blues in C sharp, all the sax players say, yeah, I'm going to go and get a drink from the bar. And so I'm left with, guitar players who, they're just like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And, of course, beboppers. Beboppers will play in all 12 keys, so they don't care. So they will be there. But, kind of most of the R&B folk and soul kind of folk will just go, okay, I'm sitting this one out. But, yeah. Let's see, what else do we have? Simok Eng, mixing, mastering engineer, is here. He's asking how we're all doing. We're all doing good. As I'm certainly, apart from my cold thing, I feel pretty good. Mostly because this evening, after work, I went straight back to bed and I slept for about 3 hours. And then I got up and had dinner. And then I have just been chilling in here, kind of dozing actually a little bit this evening before going, hey, it's like 11 o'clock. I should probably wake myself up, you know? But I'm otherwise doing all right. Mike said, oh, hang on, I've missed something here. Ambient Dave says, before Studio One, I use sections for my ambient work, building tension. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. If you are not writing songs in the sense of, you know, lyrics, vocals, those kind of things, and you're a composer and you're composing either impressionist ambient style music, or you are you know, writing for ensembles, and you're writing instrumental works for ensembles, those kind of things, then, you know, the bridge is not the same thing for you guys. It's different. You would probably call that a C section or a middle section, and it serves a completely different purpose than the bridge does. You know, there is a form of composition called rondo form, and basically with rondo form, you get this one section that keeps coming back, and this is where it has similarities with a chorus. And basically it's the A section, which is your main theme. This keeps coming back, but there is always a new section after it. So you go section A, section B, section A again, C, A, D, A, and so on and so forth. So the A section keeps coming round with different different sections either side of it, with new material in a different key. Maybe you take some of the ideas from the A section and you kind of start developing them out in these different sections. That's the most common way for a rondo to work, is you go, okay, I've got this first 4 measure melody. Well, I'm going to use that in the B section, and I'm going to stretch that out into 8 measures. Okay, next phrase. The next 4-bar phrase I'll take and I'll do that in the C section. I'll expand that one out, and we'll be in a different key. So maybe the A section is in G, the next one will be in D, then we'll go to C, then we'll go to A, and then we'll maybe do a minor one. Maybe the D section will be in E minor. So we'll take the melody and we'll make it minor for a section. And so this is what form and structure is all about, folks. But a bridge in instrumental music is kind of a different thing. Again, it may be used as a send-off into an improvisational section. Certainly in big band music, that's kind of how it goes. But yeah. Yeah, Mike Johnson says funk and new disco are kind of cool. Yes, they are. And disco is definitely on the way back. And it's definitely got a 21st century twist to it. Which I like. It's kind of like taking all of those best elements that made disco cool, and a little bit kind of chic and sophisticated, but giving it this modern 21st century vibe to it, which I really, really like. Let's see. And you're talking about new wave. Just Bob says, ain't no funk like Bootsy Funk. Definitely. Bootsy or the Brecker Brothers. You know, the Brecker Brothers from like 1976 to 1984 or 85. That classic period where it was funk, it was fusion, it was jazz, it was bebop with a backbeat, and it was awesome. I've been listening to the Brecker Brothers again recently. I was always a big Brecker Brothers fan when I was a kid, but listening to it again as an adult, and just kind of like rediscovering this music that I've not really listened to for maybe 10 or 15 years, it's just like, oh wow, I remember how great this music is. And of course, I've always been a Michael Brecker fan, because he's a great jazz tenor sax player, but he's also a great pop, rock, and funk tenor sax player. He was incredibly versatile and very sadly cut off in his prime by leukemia, very sadly, in 2007. But yeah, the Brecker Brothers, that's truly awesome funk as well. Brett Muller says, glad to see Dixie returning as the Gypsy Jazz spearhead by Django Reinhardt did in the early 2010s. Yes, absolutely. Django's Gypsy Jazz is awesome. When I was last in the United States, I went to Chicago for my last visit, and I got the chance to go to the Green Mile, which was I think it was like Al Capone's joint. I think he would hang out there quite a bit. But anyway, they had a Gypsy Jazz group on there, and their bass player needed a break, and because I think he was sick. I think he was there and he wasn't very well. I think he was sick, and so he needed to take a break. So they said, "Hey, are there any bass players in the house?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a bass player." So I went and sat in with this Gypsy Jazz group. I'd never played Django music much before, like ever. But I've got pretty much perfect pitch, so identifying the keys and the chord changes as I went was not a big deal. But it was tremendous fun, and these guys were really, really great to play with. But yeah, I wasn't particularly familiar with the style. So I did kind of, at first I did a little bit more kind of 4 to the floor walking, which I kind of realized after the first couple of songs that you don't really do that much. Except in the solo sections you can walk. But you don't really do the kind of the chromatic walking lines that I'm used to playing modern jazz. But yeah, they were great musicians to play with in Chicago, and the bass player was just like, yeah, carry on. So I think I played like one set with them, and then I said, no, it's your gig, mate, and they're just like, so where are you from, mate? And I said, I'm from Scotland. And they're just like, wow, you're from Scotland, you play like that? And they couldn't believe that I was, that I could play, like they do and be from Scotland. It was, I mean, that actually entertained me quite a lot. But it's just like, yeah, I grew up with jazz music. I grew up with all this stuff. So, and so I thought, great, I'll probably never bump into them ever again. But here's the fun thing. About 3 years later, I was playing at the Jazz Bar in Edinburgh for the Jazz and Blues Festival that year. They were in town as well. They were making an appearance, not at the Jazz Bar. They were playing at a different venue, but they came to the Jazz Bar because, it's the kind of central jazz club in Edinburgh. There's like maybe 2 clubs in Edinburgh, and so they came to the Jazz Bar, and I was playing electric bass that night, and they kind of recognized me, and I recognized them, and we were just like, oh wow, now you're in my town. And it was a great night, and we kind of hung out, and we kind of drunk rather a lot, and it was great. But they were a great bunch of young kids playing gypsy jazz music from the 1920s and 1930s. It was freaking awesome. They were fantastic. Let's see. New disco has a 30s like swing to it. Well, I guess it kind of does. It definitely has a little bit more of the 16th notes are not exactly straight even 16th notes like they were in the 70s. More these days it's kind of very, very slightly off straight, not kind of shuffle, but somewhere in between, which is beautiful. I love it because it's kind of sloppy and greasy and dirty, like good funk should be, and you can't really quantize it. It's not kind of, but it's not. It's kind of in between. It's nice and sloppy. I love it. That kind of funk. And, you know, the backbeat played almost as late as you can possibly get away with. So not right exactly on 2 or exactly on 4, but just kind of slightly late, slightly after 2, slightly after 4. And it's impossible to quantize. We got any other questions, guys? Because, I mean, I could kind of talk about all of this stuff all night, but I'd much rather talk about what you want to talk about. I'm going back and I'm looking for other questions. Brett Muller makes a really good point. He says the real book, which is basically it's like your jazz musician's Bible, the real book. There's a long and sordid story as to why it got called the real book, which involves a lot of copyright and things. And by the way, the real book used to be illegal. It used to be something that you would, and I'm not kidding, you'd be sold it under the table because it was an illegal book because it had copyrighted material in it that was not credited to the composers. Fortunately, the real book is now legal and has been for a few years, but certainly back when I was learning a lot of jazz standards, it was not legal. But anyway, the real book he's talking about here, he says, where is it? Let me find it. Because the chat has just jumped and I've just totally missed it. Damn it. I hate it when that does. Yeah, the real book doesn't typically have the refrains for a lot of those old songs. Yes, you're right. And the reason being, A, to save paper. Because when the real book was being developed, paper was a premium because it's technically an illegal book. So you got to be careful, which is why, you know, they kind of do all sorts of jiggery pokery with repeat signs and things like that in the real book to make basically so that each song has basically just 2 pages, so that, you know, you turn it out and you just got 2 pages for that song. So yeah, the refrains are not typically in the real book anymore. So which means if you want to learn the refrain to these songs, you've got to go and search out either the musical theater versions of the songs, or you've got to go and research and kind of do a little bit of hunting for obscure recordings, and then you've got to transcribe them yourself. Brett says refrains are highly popular in musicals. Yes, that's probably the only place where they are still used, is in musical theater. Why? Because the refrains typically are sung as kind of narration to basically move the plot forward, which goes back to the 15th century. Not the 15th century, the 16th century, and to a form called recitative. So in operas back in the 16th century, early operas, before it was really codified into a proper genre of its own, those early operas in the 1580s, 1590s, they would have something called recitative. And what is this? It's basically, in free time, a narrator character on the stage would sing kind of what is yet to come, to set the scene for the next part of the opera. And it was all done in free time, and it was usually just accompanied by a harpsichord or a clavichord or something like that. Certainly clavichord to start with, and then later when you get into the 1700s, it's a big part of opera. And certainly in the Baroque opera, it was a big thing. And it would be harpsichord and cello and vocal done in free time. And now, recitative is now refrain in musical theatre. So, yeah, musical theatre is probably the place that's still keeping that concept alive, which is a good point. All right, let's get to Rich Cresswell's challenge, because he has a challenge here. He says, I would love to see a Halloween challenge this year. Yes, Halloween challenge would be awesome. And he said, I started playing around with B. Locrian 6 scale today, which is, by the way, a disturbing and yet beautiful sounding scale. And it is a disturbing scale, definitely. And he says, how about a scale challenge or similar? Yes. Now, if we're going to do this challenge for Halloween, we've got to make this something where everybody submits their music. So Rich and I are going to take this away and we're going to discuss this idea, and we're going to come up with a scale that everybody has to use in their piece. And then you have to send us your piece, and it's got to be no more than 90 seconds long. All right. It's got to have a beginning, middle, and end, 90 seconds long. It can be instrumental, can be vocal, can be whatever you want, but everything has to be derived from this one scale. So that includes the chords. Okay, so you can pick notes out of the scale and make them into a chord. I'll give you a little demonstration of what I mean by that. So, if I take the Mixolydian mode, so G is G major with a flat 7. So instead of, which is the G major scale, we're going to flat that 7. So you will need to derive everything from that scale. So your melody and your chords. So this is in a sense modal music. Okay? Now some of you may have done modal music before. Some of you may not have done. So your melody will be derived from this scale, but your chords will be as well. Now, you can just pick notes out of this scale and play them together, and that will constitute a chord, and that will be allowable. So, for example, you can do this. That's totally allowable. Sounds peculiar, sounds weird, but it works. You can also, I would also allow you to kind of spread them out in open voicing rather than closed voicing. So this would be more open. Something like that. So those are chords derived from that mode. Okay? They don't have to progress like, 1s, 4 or 5 or anything like that. You can just make chords that just sound great on their own. So you could do, you can do whatever you like with chords. Okay, you can have them nice and wide open like I just did, or you can have them closed and a little bit more crunchy. You could do, or you can do something, kind of in between that, whatever you want. Okay? But that's what I mean by you derive your chords from that scale. So your melody comes from the scale, your chords come from the scale, and you can do it over a pedal tone if you really want. So you could just like have your bass kind of playing a drone. You can do whatever you like. You can have a kind of like a pedal tone like that, or you can make it a little bit more rhythmic if you want to. You can do whatever you like. You can take notes from that scale. And you can do whatever you want with that. You can put like a funk beat over the top of that. You can do whatever you like. Or you can play totally mood ambient music where it's all about shifting different colors and textures and that kind of thing. Definitely the world is your oyster when it comes to this idea, but it's limited to one scale. And everything has to come from that scale. Rich and I will discuss and we'll decide the other parameters, like what scale it's going to be. Because I want you all to use the same scale. And the idea is it's Halloween music. So make it frickin' scary. So to help you do that, we're going to pick a frickin' scary mode that is going to help you achieve that objective. It doesn't have to be ambient. It can be funky. It can be poppy. It can be whatever you want. It can be orchestral if you want. I'm pretty sure Rich might want to do something modal and orchestral. That'll be frickin' scary. And we'll tell you what that's going to be. We'll do that next week. So next Wednesday, we'll announce the actual parameters of it. And then the deadline is going to be Halloween itself. All right? Or the nearest Wednesday to Halloween. Maybe not precisely Halloween, but certainly the nearest Wednesday, which is going to be... which is going to be the 27th, okay? October 27th. So it's going to be as close to Halloween as we can get. But that's probably as close to Halloween as we're going to get. So that's what we'll do. That would be hilarious. That would be great fun. Let's go down and see if you guys are liking this. Ambient says, I love disturbing. Yes, I do. So Rich says you would have the... So if it's going to be B Locrian, I mean, we're not really kind of... I don't think we've fixed on that yet. But if it was going to be B Locrian or any Locrian scale on any key center, you would lower the second and fifth degrees of the scale by a semitone. So... So that's the B Locrian scale. Starting on B, you got root, flat 2, flat 3, 4, flat 5, 6, flat 7, octave. That's kind of the form of that particular scale. But we'll spell it out for you so you don't miss it. And I'll get a screenshot up on the screen so you can see it in letters. You can see it in notation. You can see it in, kind of those pitch values that I just gave you. Rich says, it's my birthday, so I may provide a prize for best in class. Now that sounds like a great idea. Let's see. What else do we have? Rich says, I'll help provide some materials. Cool. So, yeah. So maybe Rich, if you're up for it, we could do like a joint show next week if you want to do that. And we can discuss beforehand if you like. John Lake says, me playing is scary in itself. Yeah, sometimes me too. Just Bob says, if you over-tighten your G string, it becomes a B string. It can also be painful as well, but I don't think you and I are talking about the same G string. Mike says, we have 1 hour to spare after your show. We can do it by Zoom if you'd like until Stu will meet up. Yeah, go ahead, post it. Post it. Post it for sure. But yeah, we'll do a modal Halloween challenge. That's what it'll be called. Modal Halloween challenge. And me and Rich will pick a mode that sounds the wonkiest, weirdest, and scariest that we can come up with. Either from the major modes or the minor modes, because there are two. Major modes are a little bit more complex and intricate. Minor modes are a little bit more commonplace, like Mixed Lydian is one of the minor modes. Yeah, there's like plenty to choose from that are weird and wacky that we can give you. All right, so we got 8 minutes left. after all that has been said and done, can you provide a note for us to play by ear? Yes, we'll give you notation, we'll give you the note letters as well, and we'll give you the pitch values as well, so that you can construct this scale starting on any key center you want. All right, so we'll give you the structure of the scale, how it's built, and then you can build it on any starting point you want. We'll also give you the notation for the kind of skeletal form, so you can see it in notation, you can see it in letter form, and you can see the pitch map for it as well, so you can start it on any note you want. But yeah, Rich and I will discuss and we'll decide what scale it's going to be. I think it has to be an obscure, weird sounding one, definitely, for sure. Yeah, sorry, you're right. The Mixed Lydian is a major mode, not a minor mode. Sorry about that. It's a major mode because it has the major third in it and the flat 7. You're quite correct. Alright, so I don't think I can see any other questions. Oh, Brett Marler has a question. He said, so the Purdy Shuffle is paramount to contemporary funk. The Purdy Shuffle is freaking awesome. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about a shuffle, a shuffle drum pattern that was developed by the outstanding, probably most recorded drummer of all time, whose name is Bernard Purdy, and he created this shuffle that has a very, very strong triplet feel to it, and involves intricate kind of ghosting pattern on the snare drum as well, so that you're playing basically each partial of the triplet, and it sounds really, really cool. That's basically kind of how the hands part goes, and then you've got the kick drum part to go with it. But if you want to hear a very fine example of it, listen to Steely Dan's Babylon Sisters, and it's beautiful on that song, and it fits it like a hand in a glove. It's a perfect drum part for that song. Not to mention the song has a pretty awesome set of chord changes. And it has a pair of bass clarinets at the start of the song, which in popular music in the 1970s was pretty much unheard of, but it's perfect for that song. All right, so we will end the show here 5 minutes early, and I'm just going to finish up with the Studio One meetup, which is the is it the Pittsburgh one, the Pennsylvania one? I think that's what it is. Yeah, the Personas Pennsylvania meeting is tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is at 2 a.m. UK time, 3 a.m. in Europe. And there is a link to that there provided by Kyle, and the password is S1Meetup. So if you are up and about at that time of the night, then definitely get yourself over there for that. And before then, we will be over on Mike's Zoom call, which he's already put that up there. Let's see, anything else? Shuffle, swing, syncopated, straight time, all in one. Rosanna by Toto is an amazing example for that shuffle. Yeah, and that was played by Jeff Porcaro. Basically, he took the Purdy Shuffle and sped it up. But the interesting thing about the drum part in Rosanna is the kick drum is the low part of the Bo Diddley beat. Dun, good, dun, 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 dun. Good, dun, dun, dun. It's that pattern, with the Purdy Shuffle on the top. So ding, 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 ding. So yeah, that's what makes it unique. It's kind of half Purdy Shuffle, half Bo Diddley beat put together. Very, very cool. Very, very sophisticated. Jeff Porcaro, another great musician cut off in his prime. Jeff Porcaro. All right, so there we go, folks. We will end it there, and come on over and join us on Mike's Zoom call. I'm I will not be at the meetup because, man, that's just like super duper late for me. So I'm not going to do that. But certainly I will be about for a wee bit on Mike's Zoom call. So until then, folks, otherwise I will see you on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. And it's going to be a great show. Really looking forward to Sunday. Have a great rest of your week. And I will see you then, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.